And so at first I assumed it was a joke until I tried to re enter the site, which never worked. I tried repeatedly, but it didn't work. At this moment, I began to suspect that this website was not typical. Since Define was the one who recommended me, I decided to ask him the following day. The next day, I was shocked when Define told me exactly what had transpired to me on the internet the night before, including my purchase of pen. My mouth was open in a gap. How did you know all this? I asked. I know everything, but you will better understand when the time comes, he said, laughing. So he further told me to listen carefully, that he wanted to tell me something very important. And he said, whatever you saw on that website and whatever was going on, I was going to tell you now, should be confidential. So he told me that the material I purchased was going to be delivered to me not by a human being or at any different location, but rather in my own room. So I asked how was that possible, and I was in surprise. I asked him this, and I noticed he held his word for a few like a minute, like someone who was contemplating or afraid to say a secret to someone he don't trust. But he then told me in a whisper tone, "It will be delivered to you by a snake, but make sure you don't shout when you see the deliverer, otherwise you will get mad or die instantly." It was from that moment I realized I've just made a pact with the devil. I went home that day feeling so worried about mess I've gotten myself into lately. So it was around 8:09 p.m. while I was in the bed, just about to fall asleep, I noticed a wind blowing through the window. I quickly got up and decided to check if I had gotten it opened. I got to the window and the wind stopped, and I noticed the window was closed. So I went back to bed. This time it was around 9 p.m. and I was almost asleep when I was awakened by the sound of something trunking in the middle of the room. I carefully picked my phone, and flashed the torch to the floor. What I saw immediately took me off balance. I was startled by to see a very fearful and a shiny snake wrapped around a pen, positioned right in the middle of the room on the floor. Its gaze was straightly on me. It was startled to see a very I was startled like I was very surprised. I felt hey to see a very shiny snake wrapped around the pen, and it was already gazing at me. Frighteningly tried running to the door when I noticed that the snake had mysteriously relocated to the door, still staring at me intently. I almost shouted when I immediately remembered the warning from Define that the consequences would result to madness. I held my mouth firmly. I summoned the bravery to keep calm and wait for whatever may come next. I immediately heard a masculine voice coming from the direction of the snake. "Take this pen. With this, you have power to unlock whatever secrets embedded in any human mind. You have the power to uncover whatever secrets in the hearts of any living being. This pen is made to be used by only you. Failure to maintain its usage by only you, the consequence is death. So keep it from being used by anyone else, no matter what. And always make sure to seek guidance from the great on before using the pen, so as to be enlightened on what words to write and what words not to write with this pen. With, with time, you will uncover for yourself some mysteries behind the pen." Immediately the voice faded away, the snake quickly disappeared, leaving the pen lying right in the middle of the floor. The pen was illuminating so marvelously. The whole room got bright with the light from the pen. There was a slight beam of light from the pen pointing straight to my chest that I could feel entering in my body. Immediately I felt like being controlled by a certain force. I felt a heavy suffocation waiting on me that I passed off instantly. I remembered waking up feeling so different. Perhaps I was now connected with the spirit that controls the pen. I courageously walked to the pen, picked it up, and concealed it in my school bag. So 4 months passed since the arrival of this pen. Divine was the only person in the entire school who could compete me. So we stood up and established ourselves as the first top two in the entire country in every big competition. News about her circulated quickly and widely from one county to another. We became highly respected around the country. All individuals who knew me as a sluggard were startled by my certain confession, that is. So I earned a large number of followers across multiple social media networks. The encounter with this pen gave me a lot of fortune. And so one day, our school sponsored a football tournament which people came from all over the county to watch. It was a major tournament. The majority of them came to visit the two well-known and talked about experts, that is Define and I. I was on the football pitch that day admiring the fantastic performances when I felt an electric shock. I immediately understood something dreadful had happened. Someone had used my pen at home. I understood right away that I needed to leave the football pitch very quickly and rush back home. I made my way home quickly. When I entered the sitting room, I noticed a man in red gown sitting on the sofa with his head lowered. When I entered, he began to speak. You have you have disobeyed the rule of the Great One, and your punishment shall be of no match. You have 3 days to select between your mother and your sister, and sacrifice one of them to appease the Great One, or die on the fourth day. The choice is yours, to die or not to die. So when he said that, he vanished. When I ran to my room door and I discovered I had forgotten to lock it before heading out. Damn, I'm finished, I shouted. I dashed inside, grabbed my school bag, and began hunting for my pen. I was sweating. I rushed downstairs to my young sister's room, Fasia's room. I was disappointed. I slammed on her door and came across her with the pen, which she was using to do her homework. She sprang in surprise when I unexpectedly entered the room. Fasia, what are you doing with my pen? I demanded in a nasty tone. Brother, I apologize. I was. Shut up and give it right to me. I cut in. Do you realize what you've done? Fasia was astonished. I had never shouted at her like that before. She kept staring at me in surprises. I raced out of our room and back to my chamber. I locked the door, got out the magic notepad. So I got my notepad and began chanting some things, begging the Great One for forgiveness. It wasn't long until I felt a strong whirlwind sweeping through the entire room. Clothes, shoes, seats, and everything started to rotate. Immediately, a man in a red robe appeared, wearing a cruel expression. He looked just like the first man I noticed on the sofa, but this time he was visibly angry and shouted in a booming voice, saying, Praying to the Great One at this time will only aggravate his wrath against you. You have 3 days to perform the sacrifice and restore peace, or you die trying to disregard the Great One's message. And he disappeared. So everything became calm again. I've never been troubled like this before. I sat on my bed crying, what am I going to do now? Who am I going to sacrifice? My mother is everything to me, and my sister is the most precious jewelry that I've ever had. So I was like, what am I going to do now? The only thought I had now was to throw the pen into a deep well, and I guess that would be the end of my mysterious pen. The next morning, at about early dawn, when everyone was still in the bed, I took the pen and opened nearby well and threw it inside. Considering the fact that all was going to be well, I could now immediately find a church to attend to avoid any further danger from the fraternity. On my way back from disposing the pen, I was halfway home when I noticed my left arm was completely paralyzed. Everything inside of me became intensely hot. I became immediately mute. At this point, I realized something terrible was about to befall me. I took another route to a church located in the next street called Christ the King Church, where my parents usually attended every Sunday. I was not the kind of kid that found much interest in attending Sunday services unlike my parents. But now I needed help from the Supreme Being himself. I needed to make confession so that I could be saved from this enslavement before the remaining 2 days runs off. Getting to the church was not something easy. It felt like there was a thousand forces pulling me from going to that route. I arrived at the church but found out the pastor of the church had gone on a trip the day before and would be back hopefully the next day. The pastor and his family lived right in the church compound. With the hurry mood, I entered the compound. I greeted the pastor's wife as she greeted me back and instantly asked me a question that threw me off balance. You look troubled, my son. Are you okay? She asked. Yes, mother, I'm fine. I just need to see Pastor urgently, I replied. I guess just by looking at the gesture of my face, she knew something was wrong. After a series of conversation, I told her I could return soon. I immediately left the church premises feeling worried about the plague that was coming. I wish I had met my pastor to help me. Still a little distance from home, I heard voices of cry. I got home, everyone in our compound was weeping. The news of my dad's sudden death while he was in bed took me off balance. My mom was crying so uncontrollably. How could someone die when they were not even sick? I immediately knew it was the great one's doing. My mother's cry pierced my heart so badly. I knew I was behind all this. Immediately I heard a horrible voice. The power of the great one now lives in you, and you can't go back now.